Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to learn the Maimer of Vehechrim, which the Rebbe said exactly 40 years ago on Achron Shal Pesach, on the final day of Pesach, which is focused on, and we devote to the future redemption. The first days of Pesach, we're focused more on the Exodus, which is also the mother of all redemption, the Exodus from Egypt. And for the last days of Pesach, we focus on the future redemption with Moshiach Tzidkenu. And it's in the Haftorah of the final day of Pesach. We read Isaiah in chapter 11, and that speaks about the future time to come. And we have the Moshiach Seudas, which is also a Farbrengen. The Rebbe had that also at the end of every Yontif, but at the end of the Yontif of Pesach, it was called Moshiach Seudas Moshiach. And this is the Maimer of 40 years ago, which, of course, as we've discussed many times, gives us extra energy and inspiration. When it's from 40 years, it really becomes part of us. Maimer starts with a verse from the Haftorah of that day from Isaiah, that God will dry up the gulf of the Sea of Egypt. It's interesting, the word for gulf, it literally means tongue, because it's the piece that's sticking out, water. And then he will raise his hand over the river. It's a reference here to the Euphrates River, the Nahar Peros, with the strength of his wind, and he will smite it into 7 streams, and then he will lead the people through wearing shoes, with shoes. It's well known, the discourses of our Rabbi, of the Rebbes, our masters, leaders, on this verse, beginning from the famous discourse in the Torah, through to the discourse with this beginning also, which is actually a continuum of Mamorim, of the Rebbe Maharash, who Bal Ha'iro D'Lachatchila Riber, he was the one who taught us, who instructed us to, in the first place, go over the top, not like it says. The Rebbe's Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, writes in a letter that how his grandfather said that everyone says, if I can't go under, then I go over. But I say L'chatchila Riber in the first place, do it like that. Go over. So, his Maimer. The other Mamorim, Shemadayek Shama Shemishana Bekosu Mitchilu L'Soif. In this verse itself, it changes from the beginning of the verse to the end of the verse. Regarding the gulf of the Sea of Egypt, it says he's going to dry it out. The word vehechrim means also, sometimes it means he'll excommunicate it. And Shepirushay Yibush Kol Hayam, that means drying out the whole sea. Can move Mikama Psukim. We understand that from several verses. This verbiage. But regarding the river, all it says is he'll smite it. It doesn't say he's going to dry it all up. And he's going to smite it with his hand. Into 7 streams. We also have to understand, what is this idea of the splitting of the Sea of Egypt in the future? We really already had the splitting of the Sea of Egypt at the time of the Exodus from Egypt, when God split the Red Sea. Why do we need the splitting of the Sea of Egypt also in the future to come? Indeed, true that it says that like the days that you left Egypt, I will show you wonders in the future. In other words, and like we said in the last Maimer and other Mamorim, that in the time when Moshiach comes, we're going to continue to mention the Exodus from Egypt. Even when Moshiach comes, like we said in the Agada, the verse that says, in order that you should remember the day that you left Egypt, the day that you left from the land of Egypt, all the days of your life. So the reason it says all, it could just say the days of your life. I know it means all. But the reason why it says kol, lahavi the ways of Moshiach, to include when Moshiach comes, we're also going to continue mentioning it. Nevertheless, it's still not understood. Why is it so important in the future to come, this idea of the Exodus from Egypt and the splitting of the Sea of Egypt, to the extent that the idea of excuse me, sorry for that interruption. So we'll continue here. That to the extent that when it says God will, this word vehechem really means excommunicate. It really means he's gonna really it has the same root. You might be familiar with the word chedem. Chedem is an excommunication. It's the same word. It also has the same root as emergency, because when something is extreme. So why does it say this term so to this extent, that for the Gulf of the Sea of Egypt, and why does that have to be the preparation for this idea of, and God will pick up his hand over the river and smite the river, in other words. So why is that so important? We also know that which we learned by looking specifically at the verses. It says that by the splitting of the sea, the reference to it in Tehillim, in the Psalms, which we also say in Psalm 136, we say it on Shabbos and Yontif, to one of the praises of God, that he split the Red Sea into pieces, into different, let's just say we could say he sliced it into slices, which sounds very nice, but the sea wasn't pizza, but he did something similar. Anyway, yeah, it's Pesach Dika, yes. So he split it up into pieces. V'amr Azal, the sages tell us, the Medrash says, the sea was split into 13 pathways. But regarding the future to come, it just says God will dry up the Gulf of the Sea of Egypt. It's going to dry up the whole thing. So he doesn't have to split it up to make us walk through on dry land. He's just going to dry the whole thing up. So that, you imagine, that could have been the miracle too, that the sea wasn't in the way. Just, I don't know we don't have to speculate what that would mean, that the Egyptians, what would happen to them? Or maybe fall down in the quicksand, who knows? But it doesn't matter. In the future to come, it says it's going to be dried up. Now, we also have to understand there has to be a significance to the fact that in the splitting of the sea, that the sea was split into 12 portions. And the splitting of the river in the future to come will be specifically to 7, and not 12. So there's a significance here, obviously, and the Rebbe will get into it. We also have to understand that which it says in the verse that he's going to lead them in their shoes. That after this great wonder of the splitting of the Sea of Egypt and the river in the future to come, now suddenly it says, oh, they're going to go through with their shoes. I mean, it sounds a little bit like a downer, like what happened? And what if they're barefoot? I mean, what does this mean? Now, the crux of the explanation here, according to what it's explained in the other Mamorim that start with this verse, so the Rebbe is going to say that this all has to do with the purpose of creation in general. And when Moshiach comes, that's going to be the pinnacle of creation. That's going to be the ultimate fulfillment of the purpose of creation. So that we have to start with creation and go through how it was, and then see what the significance is of this part of the splitting of these bodies of water. So it says that in the beginning God created. The word is in the beginning Bereshis. So as we studied, we've had this. Bereshis b'shvil ha-Torah shenikras Reishis, or b'shvil Yisrael shenikru Reishis. The word Bereshis in the beginning at the head is for the Torah, which is also called Reishis, or b'shvil, and for Israel, the Jewish people shenikru Reishis, who are also called Reishis. Hainu shekol elam kulei. All the whole world. All of heaven and earth, all of creation. The heaven to include all of the hosts of heaven. And the earth, everything that is on earth. Nivru b'shvil Torah v'Yisrael. Everything was created for the Torah and Yisrael. That includes then the most celestial creations. The highest of the high. Everything, this after the essence of God, everything, even the highest realms, which are so godly that we can't even relate to, is also for the purpose of the creation of this earth and the way Torah and Yisrael is. So that it means even the highest creations, like it says specifically, explicitly in Zohar, in the beginning God created, that goes on, that refers to the supernal attributes and characteristics of God. This means, from this we understand that this would also include the hidden Seudas. They are called the 10 hidden Seudas. In other words, the 4 Seudas before the attributes are even attributes. Because something happens actually, that means it was there in a hidden sense in the soul, so to speak, of God. God, so to speak, has a soul. We're still going to learn about that too. In other words, just like we have, before it's expressed, it's there, embedded, deep, in the, because it's a possibility, because there is the capability for it to happen, and the potential for it to happen. So then it's hidden. So these 10 Seudas, it's not something that we could only know about this. This also was created. Everything that's connected to the idea of creation. Everything was created for the Torah and for Israel. Move on. This is what the Rebbe says here. It's phenomenal. And we would understand this also, including from what is explained in the Maimer that the Rebbe is quoting in Likutei Torah. Shegam ak odom kadmen nikra odom debriya. There's a level which is called the supernal man. The premortal man, and that's a reference to God. And even though God is not a man, but it's called man at that point. Shagam Ak is called the man of Bria, the Odom. The Imkein Gam Hu Nivra. Even Ak is also creation. And we could understand that a little bit by just realizing that there's God in His essence, and then all the levels are just in order to get down to here when it's broken down. So of course the levels at the height, at the beginning of the creation, all those things that we talk about, that's all for the purpose of creation. Therefore they're also created. Because God in His essence is not Ak. God is God. So Ak is already a creation. So He created Himself to be like that, to be part of this creation. He created Himself as the creator. Ve'im kein gam hu nivra, He's also a creation. V'shayich le'mer shenivra b'shvil Torah b'shvil Yisrael, and therefore He was created for the Torah and for Israel, the God of creation, which was created by. It's not a separate God. It's the aspect of God that creates. That therefore God made that as part of the chain of creation. And since the ultimate of the intent of creation, the purpose of creation, is Torah and Yisrael, therefore the order is that was set up, and that was the order that was instituted is the Torah would flow down to the lowest realms in Israel, in the ultimate profound fusion, to the extent that Israel and the Torah become all one. Now this that the Torah flows down amongst Israel is a great dissension, in a strong dissension. The root and the source of Torah is very high, very lofty. And like the Zohar explains, that the Torah issues forth from wisdom, from the highest level. The Yadu Apirish was and we understand the meaning of this means from the level of Chachma it flows forth specifically in a way of revelation. But its source is much higher even than the most supernal wisdom. In other words, Chachma, from where it issues, is also a later stop. It just starts to flow from there because God created that also. And from there it has to go and continue descending lower and lower to this physical world, the low world, which is nothing lower than it. So there's not, and like the Alter Rebbe explains in the holy book of Tanya Shatayr, the Torah traveled and descended in the mysterious levels from level to level. To the extent that then we will finally be able to grasp somewhat of something in our mind to understand it a little bit. They'll be able to be enclosed in the brains, in the intellect of every Israelite, the way their souls are enclosed in bodies. In other words, to the little bit of extent that we can understand, it's coming from these most lofty levels. It's not made like the soul the way it is above before it comes in and fuses with the body, because then it's at a much higher level. We wouldn't be able to comprehend anything like that. We wouldn't be able to understand the idea. And like it says, the Torah is not in heaven. The Torah was given here on this earth. And like it actually says that in the Torah, in the portion of the Tzavim. The Adarab, on the contrary, the Gemara tells us, the Medrash tells us that the Holy One, blessed be He, and his whole entourage, let's say, comes from the supernal realm to hear the rulings of the Torah that they are the Navalei that they're coming up with here on this world, in the lowest world. And there's also discussion in the Gemara of a whole story, when the famous story where a certain rabbi was saying one thing, and he says, well, if God agrees with me, and if He agrees with me, the river will flow this way, the house is going to lean, and the tree is going to, the famous story. And then they ruled, no, it doesn't matter. The Torah is here, and God says, and his entourage says, yeah, you beat me. Because indeed, that's the way it is. So God wants it the way it's understood over here. The Rebbe doesn't bring that example. I'm just mentioning it. Like it says in the Song of Songs, that the one who sits in the gardens and the friends hear your voice. That's a reference to God hearing the Torah on this level. But in order for the Torah to be drawn down to this lower world, it's not enough that it just comes down, lower down in the secret levels, and in that whole chain. But in order for this to happen in the ultimate way, there had to be along the way a preparation and something to make the world palpable, to be able to have godliness in it. And that was in order for the great revelation at Sinai, for the giving of the Torah. So what was the preparation for this great revelation when God came down onto earth in that sense, and He gave the Torah? Because it was different before the Torah was given. Then when the Torah was given, there was the great abolishment of the decree, and God enabled godliness to imbue the world, and He enabled the world to be able to be elevated. So what was the preparation for that? There were two things in this preparation. One of the two preparations, one has to be on behalf of the lower realms, that they should be a befitting vessel to be able to handle this, prepared and befitting to receive the Torah. And the second one is on behalf of the supernal realms, that it should be also be prepared to come down, to descend, the Torah should descend to the lower realms, as we will explain. The explanation is even we know that even before the Torah was given, there was already the learning of the Torah and the fulfillment of the Torah. That we learned that even in Egypt and the forefathers kept the Torah, etc. Nevertheless, the world was not ready and prepared to receive and get the great revelations at the giving of the Torah. Therefore, before that happened, there was no great revelation with a big noise, etc. Because of the degree that the supernal cannot go down to the lower realms, and that the lower realms cannot go to the supernal realms. And at the time of the giving of the Torah, the Holy One, blessed be He, abolished this decree, and He said, I will be the one who begins. And God Himself, it says, came down onto the Mount Sinai, like it says explicitly in the verse, and God went down onto Mount Sinai. So at the giving of the Torah, it was a new idea that God imbued the world with His name. The name of God, Havaya, came down into the world, including into the lowest place on earth, wherever it may be. This was actually after 26 generations had passed, and Moses was the 7th generation from Abraham, right? There were the first 10, and from creation till Noach, and then from Noach till Abraham, another 10, and then from Abraham to Moses, it was the 6th, and Moses was the 7th. So after 26 passed, 26 generations, the number 26 is the numerical value of God's name. So then, and those first 26 generations were being satiated by the kindness of God, by the grace of God alone, as they say. And then came the 7th generation, it was Moshe, and brought the Torah to the earth. Before the giving of the Torah, there was not this revelation of the name of God. Like Pharaoh, when he spoke to Moses, he says, I don't know Havaya, I don't know what this is. In other words, it wasn't there. Now they knew there was a God, Bilvad, just Elikim, which is the idea of the severity and tempering godliness. Like it says, when Joseph was brought and to interpret the dreams, Joseph doesn't say Havaya, God's name, he says Elikim. Will answer the piece of Pharaoh, Shelikim b'gematria teva. The name of God, Elikim, it has the numerical value as the word Hateva, which means nature, the nature. V'gam lashon rabim, Elikim is also the plural. It's the singular, but it's in plural. This name of God. Obaprati is he's chilhain the Yodai Yesavaya b'Yaakov. Now, in a more particular sense, Jacob was the first one where it starts this idea of I know God. Bechir Shabavas, he's the chosen one of the patriarchs. Because with Jacob started the epic of the giving of the Torah, because Jacob was the one who went down to Egypt actually. So you could say it started with Abraham because he was told that it's going to happen. But Jacob actually went. And at that time God told Jacob, I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will come up with you too. I will also certainly come up with you. Now, what did Jacob do first on his way? Through this, that he sent Yehuda ahead of him to establish a yeshiva in to show the way, so to speak, in Goshen. And even before that, Joseph was already brought down to Egypt, and he was already the beginning of acting and refining Egypt. This was a preparation for the refinement and purification of the world. That should be prepared for the revelation of Matan Torah. This, it says that when you will take the nation out of Egypt, God tells Moses at the burning bush, they will serve God on this mountain. In order for there to be this service, that they should serve God on this mountain, through receiving the Torah, that have to be the preparation of the Exodus from Egypt. What is Egypt? Egypt are the boundaries and the limitations. To the extent of the boundaries and the limitations of the boundaries in this physical low world, there's nothing lower than it. And to the extent to actual Egypt. Actually Egypt. Shehu Inyan Hagolus, on page Tov Kuf Beis. Shehu Inyan Hagolus v'hashibud v'avedas perech betachlis ha'yerida. That is the exile and the bondage, the slavery, being enslavement with hard labor, which was the ultimate of this dissension. This was the preparation. Then they had to affect and bring about the exodus from Egypt. To abolish the boundaries and limitations of Egypt. And through that, the world would be then ready to receive the Torah, prepared. Because the Torah's point is to be able to affect even the lowest places in the world. Bechinas Mitzrayim, the level of what's called Mitzrayim, Egypt. That even in it there should also be a revelation of the name of God. To the extent that we should be able to have the revelation of His essence and what He's made up of. May it be blessed. That's the whole idea of Anoichi, where God begins and He gives the giving of the Torah with the word I, Anoichi, which just means the essence of God, without any of what creation is about. Rosh Tevis and Anafshik Sovis Yehovis, which is an acronym for the phrase I, my soul, in writing have been given to you. In other words, in the Torah, God is imbued through this, but it's His essence is there. So now the Rebbe says, just like there had to be this preparation and on behalf of the lower realm, the slavery and the bondage in Egypt, and the refinement and the keeping of the Torah through Yosef, through Yehuda and Yosef and the Jewish people in Egypt, and that preparation then was the exodus from there. That was the exodus from Egypt. There also had to be a preparation, an introduction or preparation on behalf of the supernal realm. That's the idea of the splitting of the sea. The name of it's called the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, or the Sea of Reeds. Suf is reeds. That's on the edge. So Miloshin Suf, we could say it comes from a term that means the end or the edge of something. The Koyal Sfiris and Malchus Datzilus. And now, Kabbalistically speaking, we're going to go through now a few pieces. The Rebbe is going to go into some Kabbalistic stuff, and we're going to at least touch upon it as in the most basic way as we can, but not dwell on it, but just to understand that there's that everything ties in over here. So the Rebbe says like this, that this is a reference to the level of Malchus in Atzilus. Atzilus if you remember, is the highest world. It comes from the word Eitzel, which is next to God. It's the first place where God is already now has decided that He's going to create, and He makes the great Tzimtzum, and then the worlds. The first world is from our perspective, it's God. Now, within that world, there are the Seudas, all the attributes, the characteristics. The lowest characteristic there is Malchus, because Malchus, the lowest on one level, is the highest of the next level. It's the same thing. So now, it's the level of Malchus, which Malchus is the female Sefira. It includes everything within it, and it imbues further. And it gives off. So, Bechines Dibra Elyon now, Kabbalistically, we say that speech is also the idea of Malchus. Shadibur hu seifer the Choldargin. Speech is the end of all the levels. In other words, let's say you have an idea. Let's say you have to think about it. You have to process it. And then you want to share it. The last thing you do is you have to speak about it. You have to say it. So that's also the idea of Malchus. It has taken from what it was and has given it over. Shal Yodin is Havakol Seder. So through Malchus, then the whole chain of creation was formed and formatted. Like it says in the verse, with the word of God, heavens were made. Heaven was made. Through speech, you're able to have anything. In other words, it's sharing the idea, conveying. And therefore God could also make the world. Now the world is still called Oilam in Hebrew, because it comes from the term of Helam, which means hidden, and Hester, which concealed. The whole idea of speech is it covers up and it conceals the true intellect and the attributes and characteristics. It only gives a piece. It doesn't get the whole thing that happened, the whole process. There's much more that went on in the head. There's much more that went on in your mind. And therefore Malchus is called the world of speech. It's also called the covered world. Just like the ocean covers everything that's in it. But from there, they go. It makes the possibility for the next stage. The next stage is to go down to the next world. So it makes this possibility to have the revealed world, and Kabbalistically we also say that, so to speak, its feet are hanging down, and it's based on the verse in Proverbs that its feet go down. In other words, it's able to prepare that now there will be the next realm of creation. Elam is Biyah, the next three worlds, Bri, Tzira, and Asir. Comes out of Atzilus. So Mishom Yipored, and from there it splits off, like it says in Genesis regarding the first river that split into four rivers. Just like speech, after you said it, it's out. You said something, it's left you, right? It's separated, and it becomes something separate by itself on its own from the person who spoke it. And then, but that gets only to the way the world was before the Torah was given. But the splitting of the sea is instead of the sea hiding and concealing, the sea is split and it's broken open. It cannot hide and conceal anything anymore. Then you can have the great revelation of God. I, the essence of God. I, with my soul, in writing it, and viewing the world. And this is the abolition of the limitations and boundaries of holiness. Even that was also set aside. God broke, so to speak, his own rules. His own way was set up until then. He abolished the decree. This is the whole idea of things being tempered, things being limited, the idea of measurement and boundaries in the supernal realms. Dalet. But again, now that I was going to take it down to what's going on when Moshiach comes. So just like there had to be the splitting of the sea before the Torah was given, and actually physically so, in order to give the revealed Torah, the Torah the way we have it. So also it will be necessary to have something similar regarding the giving of the Torah, of the innermost of Torah, which will happen in the future to come. That's the idea of the splitting of the river. Now, the Rebbe mentioned many times of the dictum of the Rebbe Rashab that there won't be a Matan Torah a second time, but it's a reference to giving the new format of Torah, like the Rebbe will explain. So this is what it's all about. It says that Moshiach comes, and the Rambam, the Rebbe quotes the Rambam, that Moshiach will teach the whole nation, everybody. To the extent, like it says in the Medrash, that a new Torah will come issue forth from me. Chidush Torah me'iti teitze. The new part, new navalei of Torah from me will issue forth. It'll be a totally, completely new study. Like it's explained in many places that when Moshiach comes, you'll be able to see it. It'll be a whole different thing. Won't only just be perception. You'll see it with your eyes. It'll be a whole different realm. The revelation of through sight, through seeing this, is a new revelation. It'll flow down. It'll be here on this earth specifically. Just like the revealed Torah that we have now and the laws of Torah. He comes down on earth, so it's not in heaven. It's about very physical stuff, about thieves and about animals and about the different things, like all the laws of the Torah. It's not in heaven. It's not the supernal things that these things are rooted in. It's not in heaven. Like we already said, the rulings of Torah are here on earth. That's how it's going to work now with the secrets of Torah. They're not going to be something that's supernal, but they're going to be here on earth. I said the soul of the Torah, that will now be in the lowest world when Moshiach comes. And as a preparation for this, for this we'll have to have the preparation will be the splitting of the river. Just like for the revelation of the revealed part of Torah, there had to be the splitting of the sea, the Yamsuf. That's the revelation of the realm of speech, Alma Diskalia, the revealed world. In order to reveal the innermost of Torah, now we'll have to have the splitting of the world of thought. The world of speech was the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the river is splitting of the thought, busting that open. Now that I was going to explain that, so fasten your seatbelts. The world of thought is the innermost if it's in relation to speech. Alma the Iskasian, it's the hidden world. The speech is already the revealed world. That's the idea of specifically splitting the river. The thought process is compared to the river. The Alter Rebbe says this in Lakota Torah, the Rebbe is talking about. Why is the thought process called a river? Because a river is continuously flowing. And that's why that's by definition what a river is. We even have that in terms of the word etymologically. So it says everyone will stream towards you. It says there in Isaiah 2, it says, and all of the peoples will stream towards him. So that's the idea of the word nohar. So that's a body of water that streams. The fish and imshach tamid, and the thought never stops. A person is always thinking. And then you could think in a broad sense, and like the breadth, like how broad a river could get, it gets broader and broader. The thought process never rests and is never quiet. It is continuously flowing and going. The ocean, the sea, is called the gathering of water. That's the word mikveh, by the way, is where water is gathered, the same word. The kavu v'kimu, like the Talmud explains, the water all collected and it stays there. V'hu b'chinas hadibur, that's the idea of speech. That's already It's already resulting. The splitting of the sea is the abolishment of the whatever is hidden and concealed, that it shouldn't be hidden anymore. They shouldn't be able to hide what's in the thought. The Rebbe is going to expound on this a little bit. We'll understand this from the way it is with a human being, with a person here. Why are we called Adam, a person? Because we are similar, Adam Elyon, to the supernal one. God created us in His image. A person also has speech and thought. What's the difference between them? It's the difference between what's revealed and what's in on the inside. Speech is to reveal to his friend what he is thinking. But your thought is hidden and it's in your innermost. The person doesn't know. And actually, like it says in the Talmud, a person does not know what's in the heart of his friend, right? Because you can't see it. In order to issue forth a great flow to outside of oneself, in a way that it's not hidden, that's through speech. You can express yourself. Expression is through talking. Speech, because you can't just think it and the person can't read your mind. You have to express yourself and say what it is that you're thinking. This is the difference between the splitting of the sea and the splitting of the river. Through the splitting in the level of Malchus, which is the end of the first set of the levels. That makes the revelation into speech, and that's the reveal part of the Torah, so that was the splitting of the sea and the giving of the Torah that we had. But in order for the innermost of the Torah to come forth, the idea of the thought of God, so to speak, in a way that we should be able to see it when Moshiach comes. And then it will become that a person does know what's in the heart of his friend. So, so first the Rebbe says here, it'll be like a person knows what's in the heart of his friend, and then he'll be able to see what's in the heart of his friend. Because you know what's in your friend's heart, at least to an extent, when he says something. And then you say, let's say you will be able to know something then without him saying it. That's the first thing when Moshiach comes, but then it'll be much more than just knowing it. You'll be able to see what is in the heart of his friend. Yes, in order for that to happen, then there has to be a splitting in a much higher level, higher than just the sea. Like it says in these Mamorim, so speech is Malchus. Now, the Rebbe takes it another notch. The thought is already considered understanding. Understanding is something that you went through in a thought process. Hey. Page Tav Kuv Daled. Here the Rebbe is going to get into a little bit Kabbalistically, which we know this will explain why the splitting of the sea was split into 12 parts, corresponding to the 12 tribes. But the splitting of the river in the future will be to 7 streams. That will correspond to the 3 patriarchs and the 4 matriarchs. The 12 tribes regarding which it says in the beginning of Exodus, the book of Exodus, and these are the names of the children of Israel that came to Egypt. They're the ones that actually went down to Egypt. So that's the first part. That had to be 12, the revealed Torah. And that's in the world of Bria, the second world, the lower world. It's not yet in Atzilus. And that's a level which is Kabbalistically referred to as the 12 cattle in the world of Bria. Just extremely briefly at the point of the needle here. which is explained also in Kings, when King Solomon made the Beis Hamikdash, he also made something which was the sea, which was held up, and it was held up, if you remember, there by 12 cattle. But in the Kabbalistic sense, this is a reference to the 12 ways that you can combine the Seudas when you make diagonal lines and they're written in a circle, etc. So this is an illustration of something that is in the realm of in the higher realms, and in the way it exists in the world of Bria. V'nikroim merkavta tato, they're called the lower chariot, because there's the supernal chariot. Now, so there, Bria is already where creation started. Although it's so lofty, the tribes are already part of that, but it's already the part that's within creation, and that's the main reference over here. Now, when Moshiach comes, we have to go back to the original, which is the patriarchs and the matriarchs, which is the 7. They were called a Merkava. A Merkava means they worked themselves to just be totally godly, just like a chariot only goes to where it's the energy, where its driver brings it. So wherever it's being dragged, that means it was totally committed. So the forefathers, the patriarchs, are the Merkava. The matriarchs were also a Merkava, this chariot. As is known, Abraham was secondary to Sarah in prophecy. Like it says, God tells Abraham, anything that Sarah says, you should listen to her voice. And by the way, okay, we'll get to this in a second. So in other words, the matriarchs are also the great, were great Merkava. And like when you Torah study, which is seemingly less important, is really more important. So the laws that were introduced rabbinically are more dear and more stringent than the laws that are in the Torah itself. So that's the analogy here to the matriarchs. So this is the supernal chariot of the higher world of Atzilus. The tribes were already in Bria. That was already in creation, the 12 levels that we said. But the 7 levels are the Merkava that's already in Atzilus, the highest world, and that's the supernal chariot. The lower chariot is already the tribes holding up. So this is just part of the chain of creation. Here in Ha'ora 65, it says, Nisker gama chiluk de tato ve'ilo ba'avoda. The Rebbe also mentioned something about the difference between the lower realm and the upper realm in terms of serving God is similar to yira tato ve'yira ilo, like the lower type of fear of God and the higher type of fear of God, which we mentioned in the last Maimer of B'chol over there, the idea of just plain fear is the lowest level of fear, and then there's the supernal fear of knowledge of God and therefore being awed of being part of that greatness. Therefore, the splitting of the sea, which is the idea of Malchus, like we said, and through it, everything flows, and therefore we have the revelation. It comes out of Atzilus into Biyah, and like Malchus is the lowest level of Atzilus, is the same thing as the highest level. It's like a staircase. If you're to look at, let's say there's 10 steps, and then there's a landing, and another 10 steps. This landing is the lowest of the first 10, it's the highest of the next 10, etc. So the splitting of the sea made us be able to get out of Biyah, out of Atzilus into the 3 worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. That's why it had to be specifically 12 tunnels in the sea, corresponding to the 12 tribes in Bria. But the splitting of the river to 7 streams in the future to come, corresponds to the 3 patriarchs and the 4 matriarchs, that's the revelation of this level of the supernal chariot, the ha'avis of the patriarchs. And now even higher than that. We're not limited. This is the revelation of the innermost of the level called Atik, of the most senior, so to speak. But it's in other words the highest realm after God said He's going to create, and then you have this level. And it will be like in a broad river, but is in the true abundance and true broadness. That's specifically in Bina, understanding which developed, which is more than Chachma, even though Chachma is higher. But Bina, it's turned into something that can be comprehensible, comprehended. Vav. In the Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe finishes. We need a lot of days of Aikamayim Mechasim. This is the idea of the fulfillment of the prophecy, which the Rambam finishes with, and that the earth will be full of the knowledge of God, like water covers the seabed. The revelation when Moshiach comes, the will be in a way of a broad river. It's a very great revelation. And it will be drawn down in the lowest realm, just even to the level of earth. Can we believe in the Torah Shadei Moshiach, like the Torah study through Moshiach? It's not just going to teach the great people; it's going to teach the smallest people. Even though it says in the verse in Jeremiah, it says, all will know me from the smallest to the greatest. Everyone will know God equally, right? From the smallest to the greatest. It's explicitly in Jeremiah. But there will still be the smaller and the bigger. Nevertheless, they're all going to know the same. So there will still be differences, and they will all know. Mashiach is going to learn also the smaller. The revelation will go to view the level of earth. That will be the new part of the Torah of Moshiach, new Torah. It will be new, even relative to the Torah the way we have it now. Will be able to tell, and it will be recognizable in this lower world. And in the simplest way of understanding, even in halacha, in ruling, in the revealed part of the Torah, the kivon shebezin shagodol yesef bechachma ubeminyan yochel abatel divrei bezin chaveri kipsak Rambam. Like the Rambam rules that a court that is greater in wisdom and in numbers of members can nullify and abolish the words and the ideas of a court that's not as great, of another court. Therefore, the court in the future to come, when Moshiach comes, will be greater in wisdom and in numbers, more than those that preceded it. They'll be able to make new parts of Torah. Now we're going to say the piece in the square brackets, which we see in Ha'ara 74. Let's just read Ha'ara 74 first. This piece, they didn't understand very clearly. You have to understand that this Maimer is said on Yontif. There was no recording of that I was saying this. This is all transcribed from memory of those that heard it, starting from the great Chayzer of Yoel Khan of blessed memory, and his cohorts, etc., Rebbe Limbi well, etc. So, this piece, here is a very interesting piece. This is one of the explanations of the Talmudic dictum. It's also brought by the Rebbe Marash in the end of his continuum of Mamorim of Hechrim. It says, Osid Chazir Litoher. In the future to come, the swine will become pure. Meaning pig, pork will be kosher. That's what it says. That's a very tough thing to understand. So the Rebbe says that it's because this court that's greater in wisdom and in numbers will make the Navaleh, the new law of halacha, that a pig is pure. So there's a lot of explanations of what this means. So some of them is the pig will be pure in the future to come because its symbols of impurity will be abolished. meaning in a practical sense that it will start to chew its cud, or it'll have two stomachs, something like that. That's what he's saying here. So, avobir zeinim aspik. Rebbe says that's not a good explanation, because then it's not a pig anymore, a pig as we know it. So you haven't gotten anywhere. If its symbols are abolished, it's not a pig. The explanation is that this will be a new halacha through this new court, new based in, and even though the prohibition of chazis from the Torah of pork is a Torah prohibition, so they can't change that. And such a thing, the court can't change or make something new. Therefore, we need the other explanations. And then this is where it says that this is unclear exactly what the Rebbe was saying, but he was at least broaching this topic. This is what it means that the earth is full of the knowledge of God. The lowest part of the world will be full. Also from the term that it means ultimate and complete. Like the world was created with everything complete. It will be full of this knowledge of God. To an extent that like the water covers the siva, the yashlemar, like you can take this to the bank, like Menachem says. From this, it's also alluded to that it'll go into the ocean. In other words, what we already have, the revelation of the level of the river. Regarding this river, it says he will smite it to 7 streams. And like it says in Ecclesiastes, the rivers all flow to the sea. And this revelation will be that it covers the sea. So the river's waters will be this new understanding of God, from the thought process of God, that we're able to see it. He does, and she calls a made a mamash. May it be the will that all of God, that all this is speedily nowadays actually so be. Moshiach with the coming of our righteous Moshiach. Let's say that he's going to come and redeem us and take us upright to our land. So will teach Torah to the whole nation. Then we will fulfill the mitzvah of Seudas Omer, like it should be, like it's explained in the Torah. The fulfillment, the ultimate of the counting the Omer is the accepting the Torah, the receiving the Torah. To serve God in this Mount Sinai. Going from strength to strength in such a fashion. Like the sages tell us, that the sages do not have any rest, not in this world, not in the world to come, not in the level that unites the world, this world and the world to come, whatever that may be. From all these levels together, we come to the end of the verse. God will be appearing in Zion. We'll be able to see, and in the Holy Land. And this is the verse 84 in Tehillim, which was the Rebbe's new capital that year. In our days, actually so. And now the Rebbe said, actually in the Sikha following this, the Rebbe said that he would explain. He didn't answer the last question that he asked about the shoes, but the Rebbe spoke then in the Fabrengen about the importance of using your shoes and doing things like going to do on Yontif. It was the idea of the Talucha, that people who went to other shuls to make bring Simchas Yontif, the happiness of Yontif, to other Jews, and it goes to all things that we actually do. And the Rebbe said he would explain it. So in the following Maimer, which is by Yomer Yohainason, Mocher Chodesh, and we'll have to see if we see somewhere the connection, because the Rebbe said he would explain it in the Shabbos of Vorchen Farbrengen, and the Farbrengen that would follow Pesach, because there wasn't enough time, etc. we're running late here also. So, but nevertheless, he did say in the Sikha right after the Maimer that this idea of then going in the shoes, it's bring it to a practical sense with your boots on and going and doing what you have to do, and that's what it's all about. So may we be inspired on these last days of Pesach that we actually bring the Moshiach into our life and into the world in an actual sense, and may He redeem us immediately.